Well, I read through that handbook for the recently deceased. It says, live people ignore the strange and unusual. I myself am strange and unusual.
Coming to you on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
It's a strange hobby. Curious. Wouldn't it be better if you put her someplace? I've caused you some trouble.
The first Thursday of every month at 8 p.m. GMT and EST and 5 p.m. PST.
Are you mad at me? How mad at me are you?
The female perspective on all things paranormal.
I'll buy a cup if you buy a box of my delicious Girl Scout cookies. Do we have a deal? Are they made from real Girl Scouts?
From the East Coast to the West Coast, across the pond and the world beyond.
Captain Howdy said no.
Captain who?
Captain Howdy.
Who's Captain Howdy?
You know, I make the questions and he does the answers.
Oh, Captain Howdy, yes.
Nice.
Oh.
Not a psychiatrist, she needs a priest. She's already seen every psychiatrist in the world and they sent me to you. Now you're going to send me back to them? Help her, just help her.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
It's time for Para Divas.
They're here.
Thank you for tuning in and welcome to Para Divas. I am Marie Samuels and with me as always is Marienne Donnelly. How are you doing tonight, Marienne?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
I am also fantastic. I'm very excited for tonight's guest.
Me too. I've heard wonderful things about our guest.
Me too, and this is the first time that I'll have it be speaking with her. I've never had a chance to interview her on any of the previous shows that I've done, and I don't think you have either.
No.
Yeah, so this is really exciting. Tonight we have Karen A Dahlman with us. She is a director of the Talking Board Historical Society. She's also the author of a few books, The Spirits of Ouija, 4 Decades of Communication, The Spirit of Creativity, Embodying Your Soul's Passion, and The Spirit of Alchemy, Secret Teachings of the Sacred Reunion. She has I believe, a weekly YouTube show that she does, and we'll hear more about that when we have her on. But yeah, I'm very excited for tonight's guest.
Yeah, it should be a fantastic show.
And speaking of YouTube shows, you and your husband, you have a show that you do every week, and so I kind of wanted you to be able to invite the listeners to participate in that if they're not getting enough Marienne Donnelly once a month on the Paranormal UK Network.
Well, thank you. Yeah, my husband and I, we have Panic D videos, so you can look us up on YouTube. And we have, every week we have several different videos that go out. Sean does most of the video work. I do some of the audio and things like that as well. But every Saturday night at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do have a live broadcast. It's live at 5 for Let's Talk Paranormal Live. And we talk about all kinds of different things and have different guests. And we always get to chat with people in the chat room and discuss whatever they want to talk about too. So it's a fun night.
And what have been some of your previous topics?
We did how to tell if your house is haunted. We did some things on the 1893 World Exhibition. We did H.H. Holmes. We've had, a variety of different types of things as well. So,
and what's really cool is that people can log in and participate via chat.
Yes, they do. And then we just... They kind of talk to us and tell us things, and we bring it up, and maybe they have questions. We talk about it. This past weekend, we had somebody who they were on, and they were, questioning how can they make sure that they see a ghost. They really want to see a ghost, and I said, most of the time people don't. They don't get to see them. Only I think about 2% of them actually of people get to see an actual apparition. And he was very disappointed by that. And he's like, well, what if I like go and taunt one of those like dolls like Robert or Annabelle? And I'm like, don't do that, you know? So we have conversations like that back and forth in the chat. And then we can bring it up on the live broadcast too. So it's very interactive.
Yeah, and that's what I think is so cool about it, is that, you know, anybody can participate, and you know, it's not just you're listening to you. Not that would be, you know.
Yeah, it's not that that's bad. I mean, the rest of the week, all the videos are you just kind of watch and pay attention, you know. But on the live broadcast, anything goes.
Yeah, and I think that's super cool, and a fabulous idea for you guys. So kudos to you for coming up with it and for doing it. I think it's just awesome.
Yeah, we call up all of our fans on there. We call them Para Peeps. You know, we're the Para Divas on this show. Our friends on the other, all our listeners are Para Peeps.
That's pretty awesome. That is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And then for those that aren't familiar with Panic D, if you want to just give a quick rundown of what Panic D is.
Sure. Panic D is a database. It's an online database that you can go and search for paranormal locations. It's basically history, paranormal claims, any evidence that anybody's provided to us about locations that have paranormal claims throughout the United States. So there's over 800 of them in our database, and we continually add to them. And that's what Panic D is. It's the paranormal activity database. And so, yeah, all kinds of places.
You and your husband have actually investigated a few of these places. You make it a point to go and investigate these places.
Yeah, we're around 200-ish at this point, and we'll be adding to it actually this month coming up here on I believe it's the 16th. We're going to go to a new location that we haven't been to before, Madison Seminary, and we'll be able to add some information about that one to the database.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
you're on a new investigation coming up.
Yes.
So jealous. I haven't been out. I need to get out on an investigation.
Yes, you do.
If I don't get out there.
Someday I'm going to get you out to my coast, and we'll be able to go do some cool stuff. You know, we got a lot of them in the close vicinity here by me that we kind of can head to. You know, and then hey, next year I'm going out to your coast. Maybe we'll be able to get together and do something out there.
Yes, definitely, and I mean we could also meet in the middle too. You know,
that is true.
And that way neither one of us have to make the huge travel across the, you know, right? We just meet in the middle.
Yeah, true.
Well, I don't know.
There are paranormal locations located all over, so that is quite a possibility.
Yeah. So what are you looking forward to with the Madison what did you say, Madison
Seminary?
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't actually know a whole lot about the location. I haven't done like a ton of research into it yet, but it is something that's been on my husband's bucket list. So we've kind of been able to acquire some entrance there. They started doing tours again about a year and a half ago. And then they had some issues with zoning, of course. All these paranormal locations have issues with zoning. They always want to shut them down. And they got things settled, and now they're back up and running, and we're heading over.
So a seminary, that's a place where like monks live?
Well, you know, my cousin is a priest, and he went to a seminary, but I don't think that that's the case in here. I think that it was like a school type facility, but I don't know. I will let you know next month.
Okay.
Because I haven't been there yet. I will find out a little bit more information as I do some research, and then I'll find out even more when I get there and hear from their historians, their docents.
Right? I'm super excited for you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I always like going to new places, so.
I mean, it's fun to go to places that you've been to before, but new places are, the bees. I mean, that's what
you're absolutely right. I love going to old places. I love going to old places in general. Old buildings are just fantastic. But places that I've been to before, I do love going to them because, you get familiar with it. You feel very comfortable there. I believe the entities get to know you. And so they're more willing to, talk and chat. But just going someplace new all the time, that's just really cool and awesome as well because, you're always learning something new.
Exactly.
And totally new experiences, and I can't wait.
Well, I am excited for you. I hope you guys have safe travels and plenty of experiences.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Have you had a chance to watch the movie Winchester yet?
I have not, but in fact, we're actually my husband and I are planning to watch it tonight.
Ah.
Have you gotten to see it yet?
I watched it last night.
Look at that. You watched it last night. I'm watching it tonight. We're so connected.
Right? Great minds think.
Well, what did you think about it? Because I've heard positives and negatives. Like my sister, she hated it. But a friend of mine, she loved it. So what was your take on it?
Well, I don't want to spoil it for you too much, but I will say at the beginning of the movie, I was very intrigued. I was enjoying it. But then as it went on, I disliked it more and more. And so my final review of the movie is 2 thumbs down. Not a fan.
So my sister, she didn't like it because she said it was too unrealistic. It didn't really follow much of the history.
That's my issue with it too.
Okay.
At the beginning, everything's cool, but then it doesn't really follow what we know of Sarah Winchester and how, she lived her life and did the things that she did. And it was an interesting idea of what they threw in there, and it was entertaining, but it was annoying because I knew it wasn't accurate.
Right. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Don't you hate it when knowledge just ruins movies for you?
I'm like, it's cool. This is a cool concept, but I know this isn't what really actually happened. So, it's worth a watch. It's definitely worth a watch. But if you have a special place in your heart with the Winchester Mystery House or Sarah Winchester herself, you might take issue with it.
Now, I know you've been to Winchester House. Yes. We've talked about that before. Did they do justice to the house graphically?
No.
Oof.
No.
She has totally given them a thumbs down for sure. Wow. The script and the graphics.
Yeah, it's there's parts of it where they definitely use footage of the actual house from the outside. But there's parts of the movie where it's very, very much like the inside of the house. There are parts, but they're few and far between.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, next month I'll give you a little info about Madison Seminary, and I'll give you my review.
I'm
of
interested.
The Winchester.
Because I know you're all about history. You're a big history buff, so you know the story, and I'm interested to see what you think with what they did with the movie.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
And now let's welcome Karen A Dahlman to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us tonight, Karen.
Well, hi, guys. How are you all doing? It's a pleasure to be here with you two.
We're honored to have you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great to have you on tonight.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Let's see what rabbit hole we go down. Because we're going to go there.
We go down those rabbit holes.
You guys do. I'm looking forward to it.
So my first question for you is, I know that you're very, I don't want to say into the Ouija board, but you utilize the Ouija board a lot. So what initially got you into using the Ouija board?
You can definitely say I'm into the Ouija board because I truly am. I'm into everything that it stands for. I love the history. The history is so rich and wealthy and yummy to talk about. We can do some of that today as well. But I really enjoy, if I could have to pick one part of the Ouija I really enjoy the most, it's the messages I receive. It just has really enlivened my life so much more. And I share those messages in a lot of my books and talks that I do. And we'll probably get into some of those today. But the Ouija, what got me into it was two little girlfriends who lived down the street from me. It's that story that many of us have probably entertained ourselves when we were growing up. We would go to people's homes or do slumber parties, and somebody might have a Ouija board, and it was pretty common, back in the 70s to have a board, and that's kind of the years I was growing up, and to use them. But when they first pulled this game out, I thought it was a game back then. And they pulled it out from underneath their bed and said, we're going to do a game. And I said, okay, what game? Candyland, Tiddlywinks, Operation, something like that. I'm looking for Monopoly or something. And I was 8 years old, okay? And so my friend was 8 and her sister's 10. And they said, no, we got a different game we're going to play. So they pull out this Ouija board. And I was like, what is that? I didn't even really know what it was. I think I heard the word before. I just thought the whole concept sounded stupid to me. I mean, you got this planchette, you just push it around a board, and how long can that entertain somebody for? It's not like we're throwing dice or moving little markers around a board or pegs or something like that. And they said, no, you can talk to the dead. Now they had my interest. You can talk to the dead. Well, that's great. You see, at that time, when I was a lot younger and even up to that age, I was seeing all kinds of things. Did I know if they were the deceased or not? I didn't necessarily call them that, but I had a lot of beings that would come visit me, different types of entities, and just wonderful, very kind souls that would come visit me and talk to me. And I saw these things all the time. So when they said talk to the dead, I thought, what are they up to? So they start messing around with it. And I say messing around, they're saying silly things. And they said, we're going to show you somebody we talk to. And then they started working the board, and I said, who is this you're talking to? And they said, it's our dead sister. I said, what? You guys have a dead sister? That was my first response. And it turned out the 10-year-old had a twin who had died shortly after birth. And now this twin she was talking to, the deceased twin, was communicating like a 10-year-old herself. And so I was like, what? They grow up on the other side? I didn't learn all this stuff when I was going to church and things of that nature. Nobody talked about they grew up on the other side. But they said, yeah, we've been talking to her for a while now. I said, your parents know. They said, they don't believe us. But we do it all the time. So I got on the board. It immediately worked for me. I wasn't pushing it. My friends swore they weren't pushing it. And when I started talking to this little deceased sister of theirs. So that is what started the whole thing. And I immediately ran home, told my parents, I said, it's true. The dead are alive. They still exist. And they grow up and are living on another dimension or another side. Back then I called it the other side. I would call it now dimensions. But my parents said, oh, sure, wink, wink. And I said, well, if you don't believe me, Santa Claus will, and he's going to give me one for Christmas. And I said, that's what I'm going to ask Santa Claus for. And sure enough, 1973, December 25th, I received my very first Ouija board from Santa Claus. And the rest is history.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an interesting start.
Growing up, after you got your first Ouija board, I'm sure you used it quite often. Did you ever use it alone as a child?
Not as a child. I didn't think you could. The minimal instructions that were on the back of my box said, sit with a partner across from each other, preferably male, female. And I went, oh, God, I got to get a boy to do this with me? So I was like, yuck. Gross. But I got my brother to do it with me. And so one of my younger brothers, he was pretty good at it. So we did it on and off throughout the years. We still do it to this day every now and then when he visits. But so I thought you had to have a partner. I didn't even know you could do it by yourself. And I didn't see the Exorcist movie. By the way, that came out December 26, 1973, a day after I got my board. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but I didn't even see The Exorcist till I was 18. I never used the Ouija board by myself until 39 years after using it. Then this last 6 years, I've been using it by myself. I didn't see the interest or desire to use it by myself. I really felt like I had such great results when I had partners. And there always seemed to be somebody who was interested in using this tool with me when they heard of the stories that I would tell about the kind of messages I would receive if they worked the board with me. So I typically had people that wanted to use it, so I didn't need to go down that path.
Interesting. I have never been into utilizing the Ouija board myself because I have trust issues. And so I don't trust that anyone isn't going to be actually pushing that or anything like that. I don't trust others. I don't know. I've never thought to use it by myself either. So that's interesting that you took quite some time before you used it by yourself too. And how do you get around the trust issue? Because I have trust issues.
Listen, I think we all do. I think because I started at such a young age. Now think about it. Let's put yourself back at 1973 and just the early mid 70s. Everybody had a Ouija board pretty much in their house, or you knew somebody who did if you didn't have one yourself. And it wasn't a scary thing. It wasn't. And I wasn't told it was a bad, scary thing. And so I wasn't worried about that aspect of it. So I could trust that I could get messages. Plus, I was seeing a lot of things already and that I realized other people didn't see. And I knew that I could trust my own perceptions. And so I could trust myself. And then I would work with friends. I just didn't sit down with anybody. Yeah, at summer parties, we might pull it out. But it was always a girlfriend. It was somebody I knew. And they would usually tire quickly and not want to do it because it does take time to build up the connections with somebody for it to really move and get it spelling some good words. And even when I start with a new partner to this day, it does take that time. But I'm really careful who I pick. Once I had a major turning point with the board in 1986, which is it's always been positive for me, but a turning point when I saw the true value of this as a tool and definitely not a game or a toy and not a novelty item. For me, it became definitely a tool and a far-reaching spiritual tool, and we can talk about how that happened. But I was careful of the partners I picked, meaning I wanted to sit with somebody I knew I could trust, like I had a good friendship with them. I had some type of relationship with them, and that relationship was something that we've already had respect for each other, and we mutually trusted each other, and we had each other's back, that kind of thing. Now, I know friends mess up, and I mess up, and all that. It wasn't like that kind of thing. But if I had a friend and I go, okay, now we're going to do this, but you got to promise me you're going to at least sit with me for several sessions before you give up. And each session is going to probably last anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, might even be longer. And that you're not going to push it no matter what, no matter how badly you want it to move, neither of us are going to push it. Now, I knew I could trust myself. I didn't have to push it. It worked. And I knew if I had the right person, it would work. And so I just grew up at a younger age where there was no fear factor. I kind of worked in a vacuum with this tool. The internet wasn't telling me this and that. I didn't have social media. And if anybody told me any bad things about the board, I was like, that's not my gig. That's yours. That's not my experience. And so I was in a vacuum. And because of that, I think my work with this tool was that much more profound and stronger for me and for the people I chose because they believed in me and they believed in me and what I was telling them, my stories of what I was experiencing. And so that's why I could trust. And it just, it's different for everybody, but that's how I'm able to trust. And I do teach people to use the board when sometimes I'll hold training sessions and attend events, and I'll sit down with anybody at that point. But that's just to help them know what it feels like when the planchette does move and to get it to move. And that's about it. I'm not building a long-term relationship where I worry about the messages. But I do pick a person that I know is going to be open to the messages that come through and are also open to learning. And then that way, their filters can step aside and we can allow the energy to come through in the strongest way that we can. So I've been able to trust with this tool.
Gotcha.
Has it been your experience that you get on the board with someone who doesn't believe that it works and it won't work?
Oh, yeah, that has happened. Oh, absolutely. Oh, and get this. Here, we'll take it a step further. Somebody's been in the room when we've been doing it, and they were definitely like, I don't want to do this. It's not going to work. Then I'm like, what are you even doing here? And, of course, the guides I work with, this is a collective group of beings I've been talking to since 1994. But I've talked to many others before that, and I talk all about it in my book, The Spirits of Ouija, 4 Decades of Communication. But these guys just won't talk. If there's going to be If there's going to be any kind of dispute or any issue or a negative energy, it's not going to come through. And I'm careful now who I invite to my open message circles. So I'll host them at my house, and people may write to me and say they want to come, but I'm really careful who does come and who I actually invite to come. For those reasons, I really think it's important to have respect, especially for these beings we're working with, and for each other in the group, and not have to agree or believe, but to be open-minded. So if people are they go, I don't think that works, but I'm here to be open-minded. Oh yeah, they'll see something. It'll definitely work, and the spirits will talk to them directly. So it's, it's just a matter of people being open to it. But yeah, if somebody comes and they're just definitely, arms across their chest, I'm not going to do this. Then yes, I wouldn't even do it. It's not even worth it, because I just know they're going to cause it not to work, because that energy, it's what I've learned from this group I work with is that they read the vibration of all people that are here part of the session, or who will be listening to the session in the future. That's a weird one. So they kind of look at the time going forward too, and who might be listening to this broadcast or the messages that they're giving, and they gear their message for everybody there. And so it's kind of a cool thing they do. They come through so strongly now that if I was doing a session right now with you guys here and it was broadcast and somebody listens to it and they go, I don't believe in this, but I'll listen to it. They come through so strongly now that, and so clearly, that they would override that one being to not affect the whole group. So they would still give their message. They wouldn't just stop because of that one person. So it's shifted over the years.
What was the turning point that happened in 1986?
Well, that's gosh, I'll tell you, that was such an interesting situation for me. Back then I was in college, and I was part of a sorority, and I decided, one of my sorority sisters and I were working with the board quite a bit away from college. I think it was during the summer we started. Well, we started before that, but then the summer we were doing it a lot, and we decided to bring her board and my board to the sorority. So Ouija goes to college, and I took Ouija in its box over to my our sorority house, and then where I was living during the school year, and we were doing the Ouija board quite a bit. And there was a few girls in the house who were interested. But they also, some were like non-believers, which is fine. And others were just like kind of curious. And they're like, so what is this you're doing, Karen? What is, I don't get it. You're just sitting down there pushing this thing around and making up stories. And I said, no, not at all. But I said, if you want to come to a session of ours, there was 3 of us that I worked with, or 3 of us together that did it often. And I said, you guys can come. So we went down into our chapter room of the sorority, shut the door. There was 8 of us in there. And so this is what we did. I just, spur of the moment, I said, okay, my partner, Linda, and that's her real name. I can say her name. I have permission to use her name. Linda and I sat across from each other with her board, which was a larger William Fold board. At that time, I was using a smaller Parker Brothers board, but she had one of the older boards, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. It was at least dated mine by about 15, 20 years. It had been in our family for years. So we took her board, we sat down cross-legged from each other on the floor with the board on our laps. That's how we used to do it back then. I usually write with one hand, and I put just my other hand on the planchette. But now I handed the writing over to another gal, and she was sitting there right next to us looking at the board. And so she was going to do the writing. And then Linda and I blindfolded ourselves. So we made sure we couldn't see. Everybody checked. I said, you guys check, please. We blindfolded. We couldn't see. And I trusted Linda. Linda trusted me. And I said, Linda didn't even know we were going to do this. I said, something I just thought of at the last minute. I said, to show you that this really does work, we're even going to blindfold. We have that much faith in what we are doing and what we're communicating with here. Now, we had not blindfolded before. I've never pulled that stunt ever. It was something I just felt like I really wanted to prove something back then. So we put our hands on the planchette. We're blindfolded now. We have a person over here who's the scribe, and the other gals are sitting around over to my left side, mostly in like a horseshoe shape where they could see the board and the planchette. And so away it went. The planchette started moving. It was hard to keep our fingers on it. I asked Linda later. She said it was tough. It moved with such rapid pace. It was crazy how fast it was moving. So deliberate. Now, when the energies come through that I communicate with, I can tell who's who because they have like what I call a signature stamp. It's like their signature. It's like a blueprint, how they feel when they come through. And you can tell the energy. You feel it by the way the planchette moves, and sometimes you even feel it in your fingertips or hands. So it moved with rapidity, and then all of a sudden it stopped. We took our blindfolds off, and I said, "Hey, Dina, please read the message." And Dina read the message. Now, those names are changed because I just change usually typically names of people who do this work with me in my books, so there's no problem, later on. Right. So Dina took the message and read it, and I don't have my book in front of me, but I'm going to read to you what I remember. Basically, this is the gist of the book, and it is in the Spirits of Ouija book. It said, "Hello, Lindsay. This is your sister. Know that I feel no pain, no more. And know that I died on impact. My boyfriend's here with me too. He's okay as well. Tell Mom and Dad that we love them, we love you. We never felt any pain. In fact, the only pain we feel is when you came to our services and felt pain, and the pain you still carry with you. Please let that go. Know that we will always be together, and we love you very much, your sister." I went, "What?" Everybody sat there. She's bawling now, her eyes out, that gut-wrenching cry. I said, "What? You have a dead sister?" Nobody in that room but one other person knew that she had a dead sister who had died in a car wreck with her boyfriend several years earlier. I had no idea. And she said, "Yes." And she told us the story. And she said, "Oh my God, I will tell Mom and Dad. We feel so badly having lost her." It was still fresh that they had really not had any closure from that death. Now, everybody was teary-eyed. You could hear a pin drop at one point. And I broke the silence again. I said, "Okay, guys, fun and game over. No more toys, no more novelty, no more trying to prove anything to anybody." I said, "This is a tool that can be used for closure, to have closure on grief." And I said, "That's how I'm using it from here on out. It's going to be a tool." And everybody in that room had their own response. Some walked away and never said another word. One person that was in that room that day is written up in my book, and she gave a write-up in the back of that book, The Spirits of Ouija, and talked about that session. We'd never spoken about it in all those years, but she spoke about that session in my book and said it changed her life forever and her whole view on religion and her spirituality. It was such an awesome experience, so beautiful, so sad, so every emotion came out, and it really just shook me to the core in a very powerful way. And to this day, even when I tell that story, I get emotional about it.
I got a little teary-eyed when you told that story. That was amazing.
It was amazing, I have to say. And for that reason, my love of using this tool, and it's truly not, and we can talk about this, it's truly not the tool that does this work, it's me. It's the people that use the tool. It's the operators of the board. The board does nothing. It's just that it becomes my excuse and my permission slip to step into other realms. And I realized how incredible this is and that we all have this ability within us. And this tool became my permission to bring it out. And so I hold it with the highest regards on that level. And I hold the abilities to do this kind of work at real high levels too. I respect it. I have such respect for this.
What do you say to people who say that it's dangerous to use it alone?
Well, I say, what you believe is what you're going to receive. If that's what you believe about life, let's say just as a person, you not using a board, but you believe that life is, more bad than good, or the glass is half empty instead of half full. It's like, that's what you're going to be met with in life. You're going to tend to draw those kinds of things to you or end up creating those kind of circumstances in your life. And the same with the board. Now, the board, because it's ourselves that's doing this work, if we believe that it's all evil out there and demonic, then that's probably what you're going to start drawing to yourself. You're going to have more negative experiences because it's like we're the crafters and creator of ourselves when we do this work. I can let in whatever it is that I think about, what I harbor within. So I tell people, it's not so much that you're going to get in trouble if you use the board alone. It's that you're going to get in trouble with using any kind of tool or even doing tarot cards or messing with these different realms if you have that kind of view on life or about the world. That's what you'll end up creating. And so I say, so what the most important thing to do when you use this tool, whether using it by yourself or with another, is to check your internal beliefs, to check what it is you perceive about yourself, your relationship to other dimensions, your relationship to the deceased, or your relationship to the world at large. And what do you believe? Do you believe that the world is demonic and evil and satanic, or do you believe there is good within things? And then that's what you're going to get, and that's how you should approach the board, because it's really approaching yourself and your abilities within yourself that come out when you use this tool.
Very insightful.
And then there was dead silence.
Very insightful, because so many times you hear, everybody saying, oh, it's so bad, it's so bad. I just personally don't think it's any different than an EVP session or anything like that. But I have those trust issues, But yeah. You explain it very well. I completely appreciate everything that you've come to say so far. So.
Well, thank you very much. I am into the board, like I said, and I collect them too. And if you'd like, we can get into the history a little bit about the board, because that's quite fascinating. But I collect them, and I have 35 boards now. It's not that many.
Wow.
Well, listen to this. Okay, I'm a director at the Talking Board Historical Society. There's 11 of us, and we Robert Murch is the main guy who started it, but there's a bunch of us. You probably know Robert Murch, and we collect boards. We also preserve the history. We also pull up the history, do the research, and we preserve it and celebrate it. All about the Talking Board, which for us starts with the Ouija board. But these guys have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of boards. Murch has over 1,000 boards, and they have museums in their home. Now, I have at least 20 boards sitting out in my house. 17 are on the wall. I have a wall of Ouija, I call it, the wall of Ouija. And then I have boards on coffee tables and other places where, they're beautiful boards. To me, they're just gorgeous pieces of artwork. I have some that have been homemade, handmade for me, one of a kind, and those are just incredible. And then I have the traditional Ouija boards, because I love the Ouija. My oldest board is from 1892, 93 circa. It's a beautiful board in great shape. And the next oldest is 1902. Then I have a lot that are from the 30s and 40s and 50s. And of course, my favorite board is my 1973 Parker Brothers board. But yeah,
I can imagine that would be your favorite. Mine would have been your oldest one, but I can imagine that your favorite is your first one.
It is, and I also have a glass board, and we laugh about that. My partner and I do. My partner had it custom made for me because we call it a board, although it's not wood, it's glass. So boards, when I use the word board, that's just synonymous with like saying a wooden board or a cardboard board or a masonite, right, or glass. And I've seen aluminum, so you can make them out of all kinds of things, all kinds of materials.
I've never seen one out of glass. That's amazing.
Well, you'll have to come to my YouTube show. We use it on some of the times we talk to the spirits, and we do live shows there, and we share the different boards at times. And the glass board has a special place. It was created, like I said, by my partner Rodney, because there's a lot of different characters. I'll call them characters or beings we talk to, and he did representation of some of the main ones and put them on the board. And then when my guides first used it, they went around the corners on the planchette. We had our fingers on the planchette. They're going around the corners, checking it out, and they came back and they said, "This is a fancy board. We're going to call it the Universal All That Is board." And so it got its name.
Now, is the planchette glass as well?
It's a glass planchette.
Wow.
Sure is. And we put little felt pads. So I have a great tip for people out there who use the board or want to get into it, and you have your little planchette. Sometimes they don't come with the best little pads on the bottom of your feet. I call them the Ouija, the planchette feet, or the legs of the planchette. So you get these little felt pads that are round, and you buy them at like a hardware store, and they're usually you put on bottom of plates or items you set on tables so they don't scratch the surface, and those work fabulously. Now, I have a really fun story to tell you about this, if I may, about the felt pads.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So I had just got this new Ouija board, and I was with my partner, a different person named Rhonda, and she was my partner for quite a few years. She's passed on. Now she's deceased, but she worked the board with me for quite a few years. And anyway, I had this brand new board, and it was a 1940s, 50s board, that circa era, and it came with the planchette. And the planchette didn't have the best pads on the bottom of the board, but I I just didn't think I had my pads in the house where I was staying. And so I brought it out. And I said, we're going to use this new board. She goes, okay, cool. So we put it out. It was kind of rough. It was slow. It was kind of squeaking and making sounds. And the guide spelled out, go into the garage, open the top drawer, and get your felt pads out and put them on the feet of this planchette. I'm like, what? I don't have felt pads here. What are they talking about? So I go out in the garage, open the top drawer, and there's my felt pads.
Oh, wow.
I know. I come back, put them on, and they go, hey, thanks. They're like, thanks. Now we can do this better. No, they talk just like that. You'll have to see some of my shows. They have the great sense of humor, and it's like talking to you guys. It's a normal conversation. They have full on sentences and paragraphs, and they knew where my felt pads were. Who knew? I thought that was the funniest thing. We laughed about that. We had the greatest kick out of that.
Wow, that's hilarious.
I should say, hey, where did I leave my keys or my glasses? Because sometimes I had a friend who he lost his keys, and I said, well, let's get on the board and ask. And so we got on the board and asked, and they said, source unknown. So they didn't have the answer for that one, but other times they have the answer. I was like, okay, who knows?
Wow. So go ahead and tell our guests what your YouTube handle is so that they can come and watch you as well.
Fantastic. Well, you can look under Karen A Dahlman. Always put that A in there under YouTube, or Creative Visions Publications. Now, the fun part about that is if you put the .com at the end, you go to my website on either of those names. So you can find me on YouTube. Actually, find me anywhere on social media under Karen A Dahlman or Creative Visions Publications.
All right. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, you've had all these positive experiences with the Ouija board, and you approach the Ouija board with a positive mentality. Have you ever had a negative energy or entity sneak in and get in there and talk to you?
Yeah, I did. And that happened at an earlier phase in my life when I was still learning about myself in relationship to the world. Meaning, I find that the more I work on myself and not afraid to look at my own skeletons or inner demons or my own issues within, I don't project them out through this tool. So I do, and I used to be a psychotherapist, and I have no problem going to therapy myself, and I've done a lot of work on myself over the years, and I still do. It's a continual process for all of us, and I find that I don't get that. But when I was younger, can we go back to college? I was using a board with one of my brothers, and well, he's the only brother I use it with. I have 3 brothers, but only one really uses it with me, and we were doing it, and then a negative comment started coming through, and it was from somebody called Ectua. And I don't even know what that means. I've done research on it, and it's like a Latin word, but it really means nothing. And I'm sure it's just gibberish, just some lower astral energies. They're out there, and they can come through. I mean, they can come through when you do anything, like you said, EVPs. You could come through when you're working with dowsing rods, or you're sitting in the dark with a candle trying to talk to spirits. I mean, they can come through. So this one came through and just started saying, who do you think you are? You're studying psychology. You don't know anything. And just, it was all this negative stuff. And I'm like, whoa. And this is before I really knew anything about, again, really looking at myself to see what kinds of negative thoughts I'm harboring, or what my fears might be, or because you're going to get them. You're going to get them with this tool. I say, don't just use this tool lightly. Don't take it lightly. So what I did right from the get-go, and this I tell people, don't engage with these negative energies that are coming through. Don't engage. Instead, hang up, take the planchette off the board, stop. So what I did is after he said a few things, I just said, you know what? I told my brother, I said, this is stupid. And he said, yeah, this is dumb. Let's get back to talking to like the fun people. I said, I agree. I said, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Get off my board. I'm done. I just said it like that, not knowing really that it's me that's probably drawing it to me. And so I just wiped the board off, took the planchette off, and just said a prayer and got back on. And immediately a wonderful being came through, and I spoke to her for the next 15 years. So it's just a matter of that. People write to me and say, I got this demon and this being, and then and they give me messages about killing my family and all these negative things. And I said, wait a second, why did you engage with it to even know? How do you know all this? That tells me you engaged with it for probably half an hour. Well, yeah, I wanted to hear what you have to say. I go, then you're bringing it to you. So you don't have to have that. It's like you get a crank phone call on your phone, or you get a telemarketer you don't want to hear. You just go click, hang up, but block the call. You can do the same thing here. You go click, hang up, take the planchette off. That's your hang up mechanism for the board. Wipe it off and don't do it for a while, or start up again and not engage. That's what I say. We choose. If we have negative experiences, we're choosing that out of fears. Okay, it may be a subconscious choice, but we're still choosing it, or out of engaging. Yes, there are lower negative energies out there, and so I don't get that anymore. They can't just sneak in. I have a really powerful set of guides, and I feel very empowered within myself too. But back then I didn't know all this, and so yes, negative comments can sneak in, and negative beings can sneak in.
You mentioned wiping the board, and I've heard that you should wipe the board with a silk cloth before you use it. Is that what you're referring to?
I never knew all these rules. I know there's a lot of rules out there on the internet and stuff, but I just would take my T-shirt and rub it up against my stomach area and just rub it like that, or take my shirt and pull over it. That's all. That's what I do. I call that just rubbing or cleansing the board. Now, my board did say on the back of the box, wipe it off, keep it, and store it away in a box, and wipe it with a soft cloth. So I took that rule, and I could consider my T-shirt or shirt a soft cloth. I don't have any really interesting rituals around the board use or rules around the board use. I know everybody talks about the rules of the board. I think they're really wives' tales, but I will say this: if it works for the person, then use it. So if somebody thinks they need to have all these rules for them, then by all means, that's going to help them use this tool, then by all means use your rules. The only rules I have is to have respect for the session, respect for the guides, and I get nothing but respect back. And then I just like to be mindful, be present, check my burdens of the day. I don't use the board if I've imbibed in substances that alter my mood. I don't use it if I'm sick, like really sick or something. I just try to keep my energies clear. I usually drink water or tea while I'm using the board, just keep the energies flowing. I don't use it when I'm excessively tired. Just little rules like that. But, my planchette doesn't go to goodbye. Everybody says, it doesn't go to goodbye. Well, I say goodbye because it's a polite thing to do. When you and I, when we're all three done talking today, we're going to say, hey, goodbye, have a great day, have a great weekend, right? We're not just going to hang up on each other. So I think that's just showing respect. I do like to set the intentions of the room. I like to say a prayer because that raises the vibrations immediately. It sets the intentions, and clear out my mind and my heart and keep it open. And that's really all the rules I use. There really doesn't have to be a bunch of rules about this. But again, if you think that having 10 crystals out and lighting candles and doing an incantation or a ritual around it, by all means do it. I respect that too, because we all use the board kind of different ways, and yet we can still get similar results.
So you started out pretty much without knowing really how to do it at a very young age. Do you think that somebody who just doesn't know how to use it properly or at all, and they use it in a very haunted location, that is a problem? Or do you think that they can figure it out fairly well? What's your, because there's, most haunted locations will say no Ouija boards or whatever.
Right.
But for instance, we just did, my husband and I, we have a show, and we just did a collab video with someone who was on the Queen Mary this past week. And in
Yay!
The Haunted B340, they actually are providing a Ouija board in that room. So what's your opinion of that? Do you think that's a good thing, a bad thing?
That's a great question. I was on the Queen Mary with the Ouija board too, and we used it. And we just talked to, the guides came through, and a few other beings kind of came through and said hello, and that was about it. It was no big deal. However, at that point, I had been using the board for 42 years. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is what I say. I give people a lot of credit. I have people write me all the time. I hear a lot of stories and experiences from people, and people can figure this out. But I think the piece that people get stuck with this tool is that it can be used on a very high level, and it can be used on a very low level. It's like with anything in life. You can get a gun and you can go use it to rob banks and shoot people, or you can use your gun for target practice and because you enjoy, shooting the bullseye or something. So it's like that. You have to look at how people are using it. So I don't recommend somebody just to walk into a place that has all kinds of activity and pull it aboard if they never used it before. Mm-hmm. Because, there are energies and you may not know what you're doing, and you may just scare yourself, and then you may believe these fears that you created, and then it just becomes a snowballing effect where it gets more negative and more negative. And then next thing you know, you hate Ouija boards, and then you become zealous against it. And then you tell everybody that using a board, they're bad and everything's demonic. And you just, I put the energy back, or the responsibility back, on the person again. Again, it's not the board, it's the person using it. So I say really, look at that. Now, I do know people that don't know how to use the board very well, and they just get they get 5 letters spelled out, and next thing you know, they might get Kill, and they go, kill, oh my God, it's going to kill me. And they make up all these stories, and I'm thinking, wait, it may just said kill the lights, turn the lights off. Seriously, I've seen this, and I've seen it on TV, and I've seen people, and I hear stories. I go, why are you trying to interpret 3 letters or 5 or even a jumbled up sentence? That's not how they can come through. When you get good at using this tool, meaning yourself, you get full sentences. You don't have, there is no encryptic messages. It's definitely deliberate and direct, and concise, like we're talking. So I say, get to a point where you're at that level before you start going in these places, because if you're at that level, you've already been able to make connections. And most likely you have what the spiritualists would call a control. I tend to call it a gatekeeper, a bouncer, a master, a mistress of ceremony, who's on the other side or in the other dimensions, who serves as that bouncer when all these other energies want to come through. I stumbled upon that early on using this tool. Nobody taught me that. It's just something that just happened, and I think I've been very fortunate. So I've always had somebody like that, and so I always suggest people to develop that relationship first. It may be a guide, could be an angel, it could be your deceased dog. I mean, seriously, it could be white feather, a Native American that you are attracted to, an elder who's deceased. It could be anything. It could be just a helping spirit. It could be your higher self. And these are the ones that will help you when you start working with going to these places that are really a lot of activity, and help sort it out for you. I've gone into some places, and by the way, you don't have to go into these places to make contact. I did with the Charles Manson murders up there on Cielo Drive. I was invited up there to David Orman's house, and I went up there, and he, before he told me anything that was going on in his house, we pegged the room, went in there, did a whole session, talked to a bunch of different entities there, and it was a positive experience. And we had messages to give him and stuff from that, and I read about that in my book as well. And I've been in other situations where the spirit said, we don't want you here, and I respect that, and I leave. But you don't have to be there. Spirit is non-local. So what this means is there's no time-space construct or continuum in a lot of the other dimensions. It's a third dimension thing, what we have here with time and space, where we say point A to point B to point C to get somewhere, where you can just go, boom, be there. I don't know if people experience with this or experimented with this a lot. I talk about it. I hope people are experimenting with it. I can be at a haunted location by sitting right here at my dining room table with my partner, communicating with that spirit while somebody's on location. We just tap into the energy there, and if they want to communicate back, again, it's free will. If those spirits want to come and communicate with us, my guides will come in and help them come through. I have a whole pantheon of spirits that work with me in the other dimensions, different, very different dimensions that will come through and help me with, depending on what I'm trying to communicate with. So yeah, you can do that. Anybody can do that. It's a matter of learning to use it. So they can go in there in the beginning and pull out this board and go into a haunted location and work with it. But I do say have your wits about yourself, and really, I think don't second guess what's coming through. And usually when you start using this tool, it's going to be gibberish for several sessions, if not longer. Most people take anywhere from I don't know. For me, it worked right away. I was destined to do this, I think. Some people it starts right away. A lot of people it takes several sessions. Sometimes it takes months. And I've seen people who sat with me for months and really couldn't get much. We couldn't get it much to work between our two connections. So it just really depends on that. And then I don't trust the accuracy of the messages either in the very beginning. I tell people never to. And I don't even when I start with a new partner. You've got to build up that relationship with that person. You build up the energies between the two of you and the energies with what you're in communication with. And then it starts coming through very inaccurate ways, but not until you test the messages over time. So that's the other reason why I say don't really pull it out in a paranormal investigation. You're probably going to get nebulous information at best, especially in the beginning.
All right.
Did the Ouija board ever, let me rephrase this. Did any of the spirits that you've spoken to through the Ouija board encourage you to write any of your books?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I had it in me to write a book. I always wanted to. When I was little, I used to write my own little stories, books, and draw illustrations. I still have a couple of those. But I wanted to write a book, and I was a practicing therapist back in the early 90s, through the whole decade of the 90s, actually, end of 80s through the 90s. And I was in therapy and working with mostly what we called back then multiple personality disorders. Now it's called dissociative identity disorders, which is like post-traumatic stress disorder stuff. And that became my specialty. And I was really working with some creative people. And my background is an art psychotherapist. So I used art to help people work with their issues and to heal. And so what I was learning from my clients and just I do art myself, and I see what a release it can be and how helpful it can be to get to the unconscious and into the subconscious and unconscious. And it brings up that realm where you can't hide it from yourself. Talk therapy, you can go around in circles all day long and never get to the issues if you choose to. But in these sessions with my clients, we're definitely getting to some good stuff. And I saw the value of some of the techniques that we were using and that I had used for myself too. So my book really incorporated a lot of these techniques, self-hypnosis, certain exercises with the art materials, to begin to learn about your own empowerment within. It was really about strengthening yourself. But so when I wanted to write the book, I was talking to the guides. This group of guides came in 94. Before that, I was talking to my angel, and she was really there, helped me write this book. And she's highly said, because I think you really should write this book. I highly support you to do so. And in fact, we're going to help you with it. And so she would say, okay, what I need you to do is think about these topics here. I'm going to give you some topics, and I want you to write about them. And so she'd give me a topic like something like self-realization or something, or the chakra system. And then so I go, okay, I'm going to go write what I know about it. And then I do my research, and I would, go through other books and just write. And I come back and they say, okay, well, that was okay, but we need you to go deeper. We need you to be personal with it. Now put your own, they were like editors. I don't know what the heck was going on here. It was so awesome. So I just built an editor, a built-in helper with the book, and I'd sit down and I just start typing. And I would sometimes I had a dictaphone back then. Now you could call it a little recorder, a tape recorder. They were called dictaphones back then. And I would transcribe everything. I would just talk it and let them just flow. And back then I didn't realize what was happening, but they were starting to flow through me and their thoughts. And I could just write them down. And so I would say they heavily helped me write my very first book. The second book, I had been keeping copious notes from all my Ouija board sessions, and the second book is all about the Ouija board, the spirits of Ouija. And I just pulled out my notes, and then they reminded me of things. We get on the board, and they go, yeah, do you remember this time? And I go, yeah, I got that session. Let me go dig up the notes on it. And they say, well, you include that in the book, but don't include this. And they would tell me what to include and what not to include. And then my third book, the Spirit of Alchemy, Secret Teachings of the Sacred Reunion, we wrote that we were co-writers in that book. A lot came from sessions on the board. A lot came from downloads, dreams. I let them talk through me directly. I voice channel now with them. And I was just doing that more privately. And it was amazing. It was amazing how that book just flowed out of me. And it's because they were with me every step of the way of that third book. So yeah, we like to write together. And they're so funny, you guys. When I'm having a tough day or struggling with some concept or something, they said, they said to me a few times, they said, could we recommend a book for you that we co-authored? And they're talking about the spirit of alchemy. And I'm like, oh, you guys are so funny. You're so clever. You're right. And they go ahead and go read chapter 10 again. I'm like, okay. Thank you. I need chapter 7, I think, too. And they're like, yep.
So you mentioned that there were some things that they said they didn't want you to include. Was there anything they didn't want you to include that you were sorry that they said, oh,
yes,
yes, okay,
yes? And I talk about everything, but it was in my second book, and that second book, Spirits of Ouija, came out in 2013. Is that right? Let me see. Because the first book came out not until 2012, which I really wrote in the 90s. And then the second book came out in 2013. That's right. So when it came out, nobody was really talking about the positive side of the Ouija board so much. And so they said that you really need people to be able to listen to you and take you seriously. And so you can talk about angels, that's fine. You can talk about talking to animals, that's fine. But you cannot talk about talking to ETs. You can't put the aliens in. They said, we're sorry. I said, okay, I'll leave the aliens out if you give me animals. They said, okay, you put animals in, aliens out. You could talk about the angels too. I said, okay. And I was bummed I didn't, but it made sense because I think the people that were reading the book and when I was doing shows coming out with that book, and I think people wouldn't have taken me so seriously if I talked about these different beings I talked to. Now everybody's talking about interdimensional beings. Everybody's talking about talking to Sasquatch or fairies or ETs. And it's like, you know what? That's true. I believe many people are doing that. I'm doing it too. And so now, I talk about these things all the time. My third book is really a magical book that talks about pulling all this stuff together yourself and how to make these connections yourself with your higher self, the spirit guides, different beings, and ultimately source wisdom, how to connect into that. So we've really, I should say they've always been in that space but they were really good about saying, just take it slowly, step by step, don't overwhelm people. Yes, we know we're doing all these communications, but it's important to get them to take it on a simpler level. And then when you're ready, they will be more ready too. I said, okay, makes sense. But I wish I put the aliens in there.
So you mentioned that you did talk to aliens or ETs. Do you do that through the Ouija board too, or do you have other communication methods?
Well, the aliens, I mostly speak through the board.
Okay.
I've never had a direct download with them. Let me take that back. So when I was a child, I will take it back and explain this. I didn't make that connection until a lot later. When I was a child, there was these large beings who would come in my room at night, and they were beautiful. Like they were like a huge outline, and I just felt their energy, and it was so loving. And I could hear them talk, and they would say things, but I believe it was telepathic. And I had one even touch me once, come in my room and just touch me on the head to see if I was sleeping. And they even said, is she asleep? Well, he goes, I will check. And it turns out those are a group of beings I call the guardians, or the tall ones. They were huge. They're guardians. They're not necessarily ETs, but they're of another dimensional vibrational energy. A lot of people might call them guardian angels. They're not angels. They're not of the angelic realm, but they're of a realm of watchers. They're helpers. They guard us. They take care of us. They make sure you're okay, because there are other energies out there that don't always have our best interests at heart. And so when those beings came through, I literally would see them. I felt them. They would talk. And it was always positive. But so back to the real, what you would call extraterrestrials, those weren't extraterrestrials. So in that sense, the extraterrestrials just come through on the board. But other types of beings that are out there living on other planets or just existing in dimensions or areas of light, have no bodies and form, I communicate with those as well. And that's not just on the board. That's off the board too. They come to me in either automatic writing or direct downloads of thoughts in my mind.
I was going to ask if you did automatic writing.
Yeah, I do, but not to the degree that how good I am with the Ouija board. And automatic write is allowing it to let go. It's a little harder for me, and then I let it come through. What I do more with my writing is I hear the words and I write down what I hear. It's my hand. I'm actually legitimately making my hand move myself. So when other people do traditional automatic writing, it's that they let go. Their hand is moving at the volition of some other energy.
Right.
Yeah, that's not the type of automatic writing I do. I try it and I can do it a little bit, but it's hard to read what I wrote. When I do it this way, allow the downloads to come. It's just my way of recording it, where it could be on a computer or it could be in writing it, and I hear it. I do now more is the voice communication, my verbally hearing them in my head and then verbally stating it, or it's a feeling and then I translate that into words. So it's interesting how they come.
You wanted to touch a little bit on the history of the Ouija, and I know Patience Worth wrote a book through the Ouija. You want to tell us the story of Patience Worth?
Yeah, Patience Worth was a woman who had about an 8th grade education, was married to a man, and lived in the United States. And she got a Ouija board and started using it. She had a friend that she brought over who would use the board with her, and they started getting messages. And what came through was a spirit called Pearl Currens. And Pearl Currens supposedly lived in like the 17th century and was like a beautiful wordsmith, could write great poetry, write great words and volumes of books and stuff. And so what happened was Patience Worth started writing all these works of great writing. I mean, she had an 8th grade education and also wrote in the right dialect of that 17th century area in England that this person supposedly was, died and where he was living and where this person was living and was a great writer. And so she even won awards for the work she wrote. And she even said, I write this through the Ouija board. What happened was she did it with her friend. Then she started using it by herself. And then she started just getting downloads like automatic writing. And she just wrote volumes and volumes, like I said, and won awards. So there's a lot of people like that in history and that was like at the turn of the 19th century when she was doing this stuff. There was somebody else back at the turn of the century too named Betty White, and her husband was Stuart White, and he was a surveyor or he drew up maps. He was a explorer. He was a lot of things, and they lived in Santa Barbara, California, and they pretty much founded that city up there. And she was at a dinner party with her husband. They're very wealthy, by the way, very wealthy, and they travel around the world. And she was at some dinner party with her husband, and they pulled out a Ouija board. And the Ouija boards, they were asking stupid questions, and it was, laughing, da la la. And the board spelled out, ask Betty to come over here. And so Betty comes over, does the board, and it's working. It's working really well. They're getting messages. And then she decides to get her own board. She gets her own board and starts using it at home for, I think it was like a few weeks. It wasn't even very long. And they said, pick up a pen. She picked up a pen and started writing. Next you know, she's writing volumes and volumes of work, and then she started laying down in a trance, and her husband, and she just verbally talk, and her husband would write it down, and they wrote books, volumes of books that are incredible. Her group of beings she talks to, they call the Invisibles. That's a great story. So if you look up Betty White or Stuart White and look up the Invisibles, you'll get to read that story too. That's a story most people don't know about. There's many stories like that of people that have used this tool. Jane Roberts is probably one of the most famous ones from the 60s and 70s. I think she died in 83, if I'm correct. But she started with the Ouija board. Her and her husband, Robert Butts, used the board at first. And then just for fun, they wanted to be more creative with their writing and art and stuff of that nature. And then this being comes through named Seth. And then Seth says, you know what? I'm just going to come through you. And she used the board for 3 months and immediately went to voice channeling. And volumes of work came out of that people really, really love. There's all kinds of Seth Speaks works, which are phenomenal works if you haven't read anything of that nature. So yeah, a lot of people do start with the board and get off it and then go to voice channeling. It just took me, I don't know, about 40 years to get to that point. And now I still use the board, and it's 45 years this summer. I'm going on 45 years, but I still love this tool. I love everything about it. And just to share a little bit of the history, if you don't know this part, it's really fascinating. We believe that the very first Ouija board that we know of, we would call a Ouija board, let's just call it a talking board because it wasn't named Ouija. It was actually called Witch, W-I-T-C-H, Witch board. And we know this because it was sent to President Grover Cleveland for his wedding his wedding party when he married his wife, his young wife, and it was sent to him, and he wrote a letter back and said, although I may not consult the spirits anytime soon with this board, I'm sure I'll have a good time in the office or something. He made a joke about it. But we know that he was sent that and he received it. So that was in 1886. That's what we believe really the first production of some kind of talking board started. Yet it was in 1890, when the Ouija board its patent was being filed at the patent office. In 1891, it was granted, and so the Ouija board took off. It just took off, and it took off because it came at a time when we had the huge spiritualist movement in the United States. So the board, the Ouija that we know today, started in 1890. It got patented in 1891, and then a patent was also sold to a group in Canada, a novelty company up there that started making their own boards around that same time. But it was the Ouija board that really stuck. And so as soon as the Ouija board was doing so well and selling like hotcakes, other copycats came out. So you had a lot of other talking boards that developed around that time. And however, the Ouija was the most popular one, and it was not owned by William Fuld. People think he owned it at first. He didn't. He was a varnisher in the company. It was actually owned by Charles Kennard and several businessmen. They saw a business opportunity. They saw the spiritualist creating all kinds of devices in which they could use to communicate with the spirits. And they heard about this board, the witch board, of course, and people starting to create their own boards with alphabets on them, or using alphabet cards and pointing to them, or some kind of apparatus. And they just were clever. They got themselves together and decided to create this board with the numbers on it, and then of course the letters, and then they took a planchette, which was something that was being used for automatic writing, which is an automatic writer, had an aperture in it, open aperture for a pen, and had little wheels on it, and it rolled around, and they paired that with the board, and it worked. And the spiritualist community grabbed it and used it all the time, and people got results. And Fuld finally got the company handed over to him later on, and he took it and ran with it. He's a master marketer, just did a wonderful job. And the Fuld company held on to the board until 1966, when they sold it to Parker Brothers. And the board was doing so well that when Parker Brothers took it over, their number one selling game board at the time was Monopoly. 1 year later, in 1967, Ouija board outsold Monopoly and sold 2 million copies in that first year alone. So they were on to something. The Ouija board is the number one board that was out there. And, to this day, people still want a Ouija board, or they tend to call old boards Ouija boards, which, of course, that's a trademark, and now a trademark and a patent. And that Ouija, the name Ouija, is now owned by Hasbro, who eventually bought up Parker Brothers.
So do you have any boards that are not Ouija? Do you have any of the other talking boards?
I do. I have a few. I have one by Haskellite. I have one by, what's the name of that company? Oh, it's the Swami board. I have the Swami board. Let's see. And then I have boards that some people created themselves. I have a Rick Schreck board. He makes production of those. Those are awesome boards. Very stylized. He's a tattoo artist. His artwork's really cool. And I have boards by people that made them for me because they really enjoy what I talk about, and they give me a gift. It's just so awesome. I have one angel board, and I have some boards from Canada, which are their own version of Ouija boards. But most of my boards I have are either the Charles Kennard, the original, the old one, or William Fuld boards. I have a lot of old William Fuld boards, and then I have a few Parker Brothers boards, and then I have, of course, Hasbro, some of the newer Hasbro boards. But I do tend to like the Ouija ones the most, and I love the way the designs change. If you're a collector and you really pay attention to these boards, you can see how what shifted in the top corners of the board, or what shifted in the bottom, and how it became the design it became today. And it's fun to look at that. And when you collect, you might get a board from the 40s or 50s, but you can see the differences and where they were made. Some of them were made in Salem, some were made in Boston, some were made in Baltimore, and they had so many factories making these boards in the heydays. It was just crazy how many factories. There's like 30 factories or more, just even in one city alone, because they were so popular. And it's fun to see how all the boards are different. But I tell people, any board works, all board works. And I say, now, why is that? It's because you work. If you work, the board works. If you step aside and let yourself do this work, a board can work. And it can be really insightful and fun. And in fact, it can help your creativity. It helps me write books, comes up with ideas all the time. When I say it's myself working with the guides. We get all kinds of really cool ideas. And so, heck, I use it. I use it and allow my creativity to soar.
Very exciting.
It really is. I'm probably blowing your mind because I people aren't sure what I'm going to talk about sometimes because there's just so much here that has happened with my odyssey using this tool. There's just so much that has happened, and like I said, it's really enriched and enlivened my life in so many ways, and I would never want to ever take that aspect or that part away from this that I've learned from using this tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mentioned that I'd never used it. My sister, she uses one. She hasn't really used it, I don't think, for quite a number of years now. She used to use one pretty regularly for a few years, but I never did, and I was always like, I don't know, I don't trust whatever. But you've really pushed me to think that maybe I might be wrong here.
Well, you know what? I think, especially if you have a sister who knows how to use it, and she used it for a while. She was getting probably pretty good results, I'm going to guess. And you might want to try with her. It's good to do it. It's okay. You could start out with somebody who doesn't do it at all. That's cool too. That just takes a lot longer. Mm-hmm. If you're with somebody who knows how to work this tool, meaning they allow themselves to step aside, allow the energies to flow. We can talk about EDM motor in a second. I'll hold that. Let's hold that thought. But since she has that system down for her, it might be good to start with somebody like that. For that reason, because she could say, well, this is what it feels like, and because she knows mm-hmm. what it feels like, and kind of talk you through that. And you'd probably trust your sister. Mm-hmm. And so that's the other piece of it too. Like, my brother would never use the board with anybody else because he trusts me, and he was like, he wouldn't want to. It was something that we did. And my partner Rodney doesn't want to use the board with anybody else because he really trusts me. Now, I use it with the different people because I do have other board partners at times, and I'm always open to that, developing that with other people. But you do have to have that trust level, and so that's what I'd recommend for you if you thought about using it. And not that I'm here to tell people to use the board. I want to be clear, people that are listening. If you find something in what I'm saying exciting, and this is what it's been for me, really exciting and just mind-blowing, but expansive in many ways. I've learned so much about the universe and myself in relationship to it that I've mentioned before, that if that you find something exciting about that, then you can make that your intention using the board. If you just want to talk to animals, I do a lot of animal communication. I get great results with animals that are alive, not just deceased animals. So if that excites you, that might be why you want to use the tool. There's many different reasons why to use this. I kind of like exploring consciousness, levels of consciousness, and that takes in all accounts of all life forms. So that's kind of where I am with it. And if that excites you, then you know what? You might want to give it a whirl. You never know. And then it may not be somebody's cup of tea, and that's fine. And there's other ways to do this work. As I said, a lot of people do this just through opening their mind, getting in a slight trance state, and allowing the energies to flow through and the messages to come that way. That has always been a little harder for me, but now I'm learning it, and that really requires a lot of trust. Trust me on that. That's talk about trust. Holy cow! That's like and my guides say, God, you have a lot of will. We like that. We like that will you have, that free will, because you use it. They said, but dang, it's hard sometimes to get through. Like, oh, I know it is. It can be tough getting through this noggin. So I don't know, that you might enjoy trying it again if you find something in what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to say something about the EDM motor, if I may.
Sure.
Many people say that's all that's happening here, and I'm not willing to. I'm not going to say I discount that. I believe that we are able to tap into our subconscious with this tool too. It becomes like automatism is what they used to call it, or animal magnetism, and mesmerism that they used to call it as well, where you can, like hypnosis is a form of that, where you can go under and you still are aware of yourself, but then things can come out and you can bubble up to the top, and you can bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken, or that's the stage hypnotism. But I use it for past life regressions or future life progressions, or going in between lives and talking to your guides. And so when I was a therapist, I was also a hypnotherapist, and I did a lot of that work. And so that's no different. than maybe getting into your subconscious mind. Now, what the ideomotor says is that it's your muscle movements are being influenced by your brain, and that's all that's happening here. Mm-hmm. Well, I would have to say I beg to differ. I'm open to that because I don't understand consciousness. None of us really do. But when that girl's sister came through in that sorority house when we were blindfolded, that's really incredible stuff that I could do if it was just me doing it all alone without the help of this spirit. Regardless of what it was, these messages I'm getting, you could call it what you want to. I tell people, call it ideomotor if you want to, call it my subconscious. That's fine. But what's happening here is I'm getting some really incredible messages that are helping people with whether it's grief, closure, or just in their life in general. And same with me. So I don't discount that. I spent from 89 to 93, 4 years with two other people who were my board partners back then, doing nothing but speaking to our higher selves. Once in a while, spirit might come through or something, but we really were geared towards sitting down weekly, if not 2 times a week, it just depended when we were together, and talk to our higher selves with this tool. So we purposely wanted to talk to ourselves. And what I think happened in my own progression with doing that, and I highly recommend people try to make the ideomotor work or the higher self work, is that I got to know some parts of myself, and these parts of myself emerged, and they started talking to me and telling me things of how to succeed in business, ways to make money. At the time, I was struggling at becoming a therapist, and I was just out on my own for the first time, really working. And I just graduated from graduate school, and I was, trying to make my way in the world. And they really helped me in some profound ways with that, and just how to be a better person in life overall, and giving me a lot of teachings. And not just my higher self; those people's higher selves came out too, and their higher selves would talk to me, or our higher selves would talk together, all on the board. It was just some crazy cool stuff. And so I say, yeah, you can talk to yourself. You can bring out the subconscious aspects of yourself. And I say, then you can use a tool for that if you don't feel like bringing in other spirits. But doing that, along that process of working with developing this part of myself and getting to know that part of myself and making that literal connection that I'm so connected to my higher self right now. It's easy. It's fun. I love it. I get great advice at times. Sometimes I don't listen to it, but I do get great advice sometimes. I found during that progression, then the angelic realm came through. Then the ETs started coming through. And then I was prepared for the animals to come through and these group of guides that came through. It was developing my inner self first that allowed me to bring in all these higher vibrational forms that started coming through. And that was my point I wanted to make. Whatever people want to call it, ideomotor or not, do those experiments and you'll be really amazed. Really amazed.
What would be your advice on how to start that session? Well,
you've got to have that intent, and you've got to have that desire and the openness that it could be possible, and that it could be possible to have a higher self. So you kind of have a belief system in place that says, I believe there's a part of me that's larger than me, that exists beyond my corporeal experience and around beyond my body, exists outside and connects me really back to the cosmos, and is that part of me that guides over me too, and reaches way far out, then it goes beyond my aura and all that. If you start believing on those levels, you can start communicating with it. I highly recommend that people start to use the power of their imagination and visualization. And what I mean by that is, before they even start using this tool to do that, I was doing so much hypnosis work, and I had undergone past life regression myself and hypnosis work as part of my training before I became trained, but also part of my training too. And I was doing this concurrently when I was being a therapist, or simultaneous when I was being a therapist. It helped me so I would get my own crap and junk out of the therapy session, so I can focus on the person that was there, my client's crap and junk, and didn't leave my stuff in there. So I was doing that to keep myself that space. So people knew when they came to me, I would hold a space for them where we could work on their stuff, not my projections. But I found that doing that work inside of myself first. So I would suggest this to somebody, that they close their eyes and they go into their own kind of meditation, which means you just close your eyes and you start to envision that you have this beautiful being that looks out over you, that is a part of you, but exists beyond your body. And you can imagine that like a light. And in fact, I imagine it like a bright yellow light or a bright white light. Now it's become a white light. Back then it was a bright golden yellow light. And then I learned to expand that in my body with my mind, with my mind's eye, and I see it and feel it expanding in my body, and then it expands out. It goes through the pores of my body out into the universe, where it connects back up with all that is, with source, with God, with creator. It just connects with other bright white lights. And I know that's part of me. And then you begin making that connection. And that connection in itself, when you start visualizing that, you begin to feel it. You go, oh, I do feel that light in me. When you start recognizing that light within yourself, it becomes easier to connect with that higher self, because that truly is your spark within. This is my book, the third book I wrote, the Spirit of Alchemy, Secret Teachings of the Sacred Reunion, is all about doing this. Because people started asking me, well, how would I do this? I go, okay, here comes the third book. Okay, so it's easy. People just tell me what they want and I write it. So when you do that, then you sit down at the board. And I say, do that visualization before you sit down at the board, and then make your intentions of such. You sit at the board before you start, you with a partner by yourself. You state a prayer. You might say, okay, I always say, God, Goddess, Universe, Spirit, all my guides, and all those relations that have the best interest in my heart. I ask to speak to my higher self. I'm surrounded by that white, beautiful light of love, surrounds my higher self too, and I allow my higher self now to be in communion with me. And I ask for those communications. And I thank you in advance for this. That right there, saying a prayer of that nature or something of that nature, not only raises your vibration, it sets the intention, it opens the door, and now you're welcoming that part of yourself to be in communication with you. And by the way, it's always there, but we don't always plug into it. I talk a lot about this. It's called plugging into the outlet of your higher self. You just like plugging a cord into the wall, like your computer cord. You got to plug in. The battery will die. It's like you got to plug into it, or it's going to be inept. It's not going to work. It's going to be broken in a way. It's there, but it asks for you to be willing to allow it to connect with you. Although it always is with you, we just don't recognize it. It wants to be recognized. When I say it, for better use of words, it's really you. It's the greater part of you that will always exist. You can call it your soul, your spirit. I tend to call it my higher self. Because that's the part of me that could be in communication with me, probably a lot easier than my soul self. So you do that intention and sit at the board, and that's all you ask to come through. And you wait until that comes through, and you're patient until it comes through. And it could be several sessions. And then something might come through, and then trickster could come through maybe, or something, a joker, I call them joker tricksters, or lower energies. And you say, I'm sorry, I'm not ready to talk to you at this time, but later on, maybe you can come through, but not right now. And, we don't have to be mean. And then they move on. They go along their way. And you sit there until it comes through. And you may not know until you start writing the sessions down and record them. I write everything down. And you look at it over a period of time. And then you start to see, are the messages consistent? Are they uplifting? Are they helpful? They never should be demeaning. They never should be degrading. They never should call you names. When you get to these levels of these kind of beings, including your higher self, it's very loving. It's like a wise elder or a master speaking to you in terms that help you to be your best, but they're not going to do it for you. And even your higher self is not going to do it. But they say, you plug into this aspect of yourself, you will find that you will feel more in your center, and you will find that you'll have your true north, your GPS turned on. And you'll feel like you go through life that way when you're plugged in. I know for a fact I do. I feel that. And I know when I'm not plugged in, I go, oh, shit, I unplugged. I unplugged myself. Gosh, I got to get plugged back in. So that's how you start doing it. I say really use the faculties of your imagination, your mind, to help you to visualize this, and then sit down and make your intention and your statement, and then sit at the board and allow it to come through. And it will. It will. Just may take a little bit of time, but it will come through, because it's probably the easiest being or character to contact would be your higher self.
That makes sense. You should know yourself, right? You should be able to talk to yourself.
That's exactly right.
Many people say talking to yourself is bad. I disagree. So
it takes it to a whole new level, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it becomes very automatic. It's just so cool. Now, what I do is I talk to myself out loud sometimes because I'm so used to talking to myself. I've caught myself in the grocery store saying, okay, did you want to get that? No, I think I want to get it. It's just me. It's not like a guide's coming through. It's just me. And I'm going, oh, that's kind of embarrassing. I'm one of those crazy old ladies now at the grocery store.
I do that to myself all the time. And, I've never even tried to talk to my higher self, but I've still talked to myself out loud too. So
quite often at work, I have coworkers. Are you talking to me, or are you talking to yourself? I'm just talking to myself.
You're like, oops, it slipped
That's
out.
Just me again.
Oh God, that's hysterical.
Well, I mean, sometimes that's where you get the best advice from, though, right?
I agree. And it's funny when you're doing it, you're not even thinking about it. And then all of a sudden somebody says something to you that catches you, or you see somebody look at you weird, like, oh, oops.
Yeah, well, let them think what they want to.
Exactly.
I'm having a fine conversation with myself.
And you're not invited. I find better company there sometimes.
Well, what else can we talk about the Ouija board? You could tell us how it got its name.
Oh, that's a lovely story. Have you heard this before?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I love telling this story. I do put it in my book, The Spirits of Ouija, as well. I put a lot of this, the history and the story in there because I think it's important for people to know when they use this tool where it really came from, what it's really about. It's not from China and some ancient Greece thing. Although there were divination tools that were wrote, that was not considered the Ouija, and that's not where the inspiration for this Ouija board came from.
Well, and there's a misconception too that it's German, yes, and
yes,
right.
Yes, ja. Everyone thinks it means oui, ja, like French for oui is yes, and ja is yes in German, and that's a misconception too. That's a wise tale. It's kind of a clever tale. It's kind of fun. We know this for a fact because again, the people from the Talking Board Historical Society are incredible historians, and they've done the research. They found the articles. They have the archives that talk about all this. This is how we know how the Ouija really got its name, and why it's called what it is. So it's not it is Ouija. Originally, when it was patented, it was to be pronounced as Ouija. Although now everybody says Ouija, that's become okay to say Ouija too. So you could say Ouija. You'll hear me mostly say Ouija. I'm just so used to saying Ouija instead of Ouija. Once in a while it comes out. I might, if I say it real quickly, Ouija, it might come out like that. But okay, so Ouija got named. This is a great story. Oh, I'm so glad we're talking about this because this is a segue to tell you something that we're going to be doing, a real cool thing, the Talking Board Historical Society in September. Okay, so a lot of people don't know that there is actually a woman who is also considered one of the founders of the Ouija board. Her name is Helen Peters. Now, when the Ouija board is going to get patented. I'm going to back up before we get to the name of the board. I'm going to back up to, well, no, let me tell the name of the board first, and then I'll tell you about the patent office. It was really a cool story. You may not have heard that one. Okay, so Helen Peters, Charles Kennard, and Elijah Bond, and I believe there was somebody else at that session. They were doing a session with this new board. They did not have a name for it. And so they decided what they called, and this is what they said, and it's in an article, it's written out. It says, we asked the board, what should we call you? And they said, and then the message came back, and it spelled out Ouija. And they said, Ouija? And the board said, yes. They said, what does that mean? They said it means good luck in Egyptian, or it means good luck, or in Egyptian, good luck. They said, okay, we'll call it the Egyptian Good Luck Board and Ouija. So they actually patent both those terms, Ouija and Egyptian Good Luck Board. Okay, so Helen Peters was there at that session. And when they spelled out Ouija, she opened up this locket that was hanging on a chain, opened it up, and inside it had a picture of a woman. And it spelled in there O-U-I-D, as in David, Ouida. Now, Ouida was a pen name of a feminist writer at the turn of the century, late 1800s. And so it wouldn't be weird for her to be wearing that on her locket because it was a famous feminist writer. And if you know more about Helen Peters, you understand she was pretty avant-garde herself and pretty ahead of her times. And I'll explain that in a second. So they said, were you thinking about that, Helen? And she said, no, I wasn't thinking about that at all. But that's weird. It's very close to this name. Well, they stuck with the word Ouija, and that's what they took to go get patented. Now, they go to the patent office. Helen Peters, who is considered a gifted psychic herself, because she could use this board and also considered a psychic, went with Elijah Bond, who was their attorney with this group of investors for this board. Those two were the ones that went to the patent office. And they kept talking to all the patent people there that were working in the office. Hey, can you patent this board for us? We want to get this patent and trademark. And they said, no, we can't. We don't have time. We can't. No. And they finally they waited. They said, okay, we're not leaving until you let us speak to the supervisor here. So the main patent officer walks out, comes out. And as the story goes, now we haven't been able to totally corroborate the story, but as a story that's been passed down, we believe it probably is true. So I'll say it with like 95% accuracy. This is what we think happened. The patent officer said, okay, Mr. Bond, and Miss Peters, if you can sit down at your little contraption here, your board, and it spells out my name, because I know you don't know who I am, then guess what? I'll give you your patent. Well, it spelled out his name, and he gave him their patent.
Ta-da! That is super cool.
So that's the story of how Ouija got its name and how it also got patented.
That's cool.
Let me tell you about Helen Peters now. People don't know about Helen Peters. People forget about her. And you know what's so sad is that she was buried in a cemetery in Denver, Colorado, and has no headstone. And so, guess what we're going to do?
You guys are going to do it.
What you're going to do.
Yay! We're going to give her the most beautiful monument headstone you've ever seen. It's a gift from us. It's going to be dedicated to her. We know her family members. They've all agreed. They're so excited. They didn't have enough money to pay for this, and she's going to get the best and the biggest one. The cemetery's agreed. We're doing a big revealing party. We hope people can come out. It's going to be, let me see what the dates are. The 22nd, I believe that's a Saturday in September. I have another event I'm doing the week before. That's why I'm getting my dates confused. Let's see, 14 and 17. Yeah, it's 22nd. It's going to be at 10 o'clock, unveiling out, and more details are coming. I'll tell you what it'll be on my website. It'll be on Talking Board Historical Society website. It's going to be on Facebook. It's going to be in all social media. I'll be talking all about it. We all will be. But you could, the public's invited for free, a free unveiling at 10 o'clock in the morning. Then we're having a party afterwards at 1 o'clock where people buy tickets, and it's going to be all kinds of fun we're going to be doing at that event. And we hope people will come out. We're also accepting donations to help with this monument. Like I said, it's been approved. Everybody's stoked. The media's going to be there. We got some really cool surprises in store. I'll be there, all the members of the Talking Board Historical Society, and it's going to be a great event. Super stoked.
That's so awesome. And a lot of people might not know, this isn't the first headstone that you've actually... Yeah.
Go ahead, tell them.
But they also gave William Fuld a headstone.
Actually, it was Elijah Bond.
I thought it was Fuld.
No, everybody does. But there is a Ouija board in the back of it. It was Elijah Bond. That was the patent attorney, you guys.
Right.
So see, look, the patent attorney and Helen Peters, who got this patent for everybody, for Charles Kennard Novelty Company, and for all of us that get to use it, they both are being honored. So that's what formed the Talking Board Historical Society. When Robert Murch and his group, Gene Orlando and a few others, Andrew Vespia, let's see, John was in there, I think Rick, a few of them, when they first started this group, that was in 2008, I believe it was. That's when it loosely formed, and then it started after that. That's when this group formed, because they put up that headstone, and because they wanted, again, to dedicate. This guy the guy had no memory. I mean, now it's the most famous headstone in the world. Everybody goes and takes pictures with it, and it's just remarkable. And hers is going to be even that much more beautiful. So I hope everybody comes and sees it and joins us. It's going to be fantastic.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm excited to see it too.
Thank you. I am too. And it's just, and everybody could be a part of this. Like I said, come out, and it's free in the morning, and you could donate and be a part of just this history in the making. And you can always then say, you help place that stone in place. I mean, it's awesome. So we're super excited. And you guys, everybody come join us at Talking Board Historical Society Facebook page, or tbhs.org, which is our website. And then you can learn about all of us that are part of this group and our unique backgrounds. We're all very unique and different in our own ways. And we all have, what we all have in common is our reverence and our sharing of the love of the Ouija board and talking boards.
Marienne, did you have any last questions?
I kind of wanted to ask about deja vu a little bit, but I don't know. I don't know how in tune with that you are, but I had some people ask me just recently, about deja vu, and I don't know. Do you have any expertise in that area?
Well, I definitely have some thoughts about it. And again, these are my thoughts. And I've worked with it somewhat, too. I've written about it in one of my books because I was experiencing a lot of that. And so we can approach it from many different levels. And I like to consider deja vu like those synchronistic moments when something is that familiar. And I also like to liken it to our self being a multidimensional being existing on many different realms. And the guides talk to me about this stuff all the time, how we are not just existing in this one dimension, this third dimension. We are actually beings that are existing. Everything is happening now, all of our past, future, present lives. And we're also living in other realms as different kinds of beings. It could be as a light source being, it could be as another human being. And so this whole thing of like, something it's like you kind of trip into, we'll say that because we have a hard time making this happen on our own, but we kind of trip into this other realm for a moment and timelines blend and merge and you go, wow, I just did this before, or I'm doing it again. And technically you could be doing it again, or you could have done it before, or you're remembering a part of you that's existing and did this on another dimension. So this really gets out there further than our minds, our brains, I should say our brain is capable of comprehending at the level of which we're only using it. Until we start unlocking some of this other DNA within us. The guides talk to me about source code DNA all the time. They say it's all within your source code, but you're just not activating it yet. And then you don't really, your body, in your brain can't really handle that full activation at this time. But as you grow in your own awareness, you start to have a glimmer or glimpses of these concepts. So yeah, I think deja vu is an aspect of what I'm talking about, this multidimensional aspect of ourself synchronistically aligning or tripping into itself and saying, wow, I did this before, or I know this person, kind of thing. What do you think about it?
Well, I think that most people experience it, and I have, and I've experienced it myself. But where it comes from, I honestly I don't know. But it just seems odd that some people experience it so much more often. And so maybe what you're saying is right, that you're experiencing this on a different level, in a different dimension, and then you're somehow tying the two dimensions together now.
Yeah, that's how I feel it to be for me. It's the best way I can explain it. But I also want to say, everybody has synchronistic events happening and deja vu. I think they tune it out or quickly move past it, because all these things I'm talking about, we all have the ability. The guides talk to people about this all the time. What I'm doing is nothing special. Everybody can do this. It's just a matter of, are we willing, or do we want to? We may not want to, and that's okay too. But I believe that we all do have it. We just don't pay attention to when it does happen, or we block it out, or we don't want to. You know, we might be comfortable just the way, however we're living our life, and that's perfectly all right, because we all have different paths of evolution or direction, and in our own way, as a wise sage once said, all roads up the mountain lead to the top. Doesn't matter which one you take; it's eventually going to get you there. You know, we're all kind of doing that. And so I think everybody does have these experiences, just may not always pay attention to them or acknowledge them.
Do you think that individuals who have more psychic ability or abilities to talk to their higher selves would experience that more often than someone else?
Yeah, I would. I do think so. I think they're going to be open to the possibility of that. And when you're open to things, you start to notice them more. It's kind of like you want to get that red car, and everybody talks about the proverbial red car you see on the streets all the time. And right? It's that kind of thing, because now you're open to it. You're going to be aware of it. And so you're going to think about it, and then you might start exploring it. And I can tell you this, and I talk about this all the time. My sixth sense, for better use of words, let's just call them the clairsenses, has developed incredibly in tandem as I've been working with this tool, because I've been developing myself working with this tool. And the possibilities for expression of anybody's abilities within, including mine, have just gone off the charts. And it's not something I go, oh, I noticed it all of a sudden. It's like now I can look back and I can see it. It's like, but I remember as I've been progressing through the years, I would see it then too. Like, wow, I really can start seeing these beings again that I see as a child. Oh, I now I can hear them. Now I can talk to them more. And wow, they've enriched my life. And it's the process of acknowledging and opening and welcoming. It becomes that much more pronounced, and it happens more often. And so, yes, I do say people that are open to, talking to your higher self, you're going to be open to well, here we go. The door's open. I mean, you go down the rabbit hole. Once you do this, you guys, you go down that rabbit hole, and then all of a sudden, all kinds of things start happening. And I don't mean it has to be negative. It doesn't have to be. Again, it's getting to know yourself within and making choices of what you want to have, what you want to experience, and allowing those to come through. And when something comes through you don't really like so much, learn what it is you need to do. People call it protection. I might call it protection. I might call it just empowering myself. I call it getting to know myself more and getting stronger in my higher self. And then you get to choose. You get to have more free will, and then things just start developing. You start developing these senses within yourself. And I know that might scare people. Maybe they say, I don't want that. And I respect that. And then I say, you know what? Don't then. And if somebody wants it, I say, yeah, do. Because it's just you becoming more of your greatest self. That's what you're doing. You're becoming more aligned with your greatest self in many, many surprising and cool ways.
I'm trying it for sure.
Oh, yay! You're going to try the higher self thing, communicate with your higher self?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. You got to let me know how it goes and talk to me during it. People write to me and I'll you will be in chat. We'll talk about it. I think it'd be great to hear. And if it starts working really well for you, let's do a show again and we'll come on and talk about it.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll keep you posted and we'll see how quickly I get this going on.
Well, I'm super excited for you. I got to tell you, because I can tell of your enthusiasm and excitement for it, your dedication to it. It's going to work. There's just no doubt in my mind for that reason. Those reasons, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I am very fond of the Ouija, so we'll see.
Yay!
As soon as we're done here, she's going to go pull out her Ouija board and she is going to start working on this. I know her. She won't wait till after dinner. It's going to happen as soon as we're done.
You know what? I think you should. And right now I'm at a different location than I normally am, and I brought my Ouija board with me from my other house, and so I always travel with my boards. Because I might pull it out, but I don't need a board. The guides are here, and I can feel them, and they're super excited to be in this conversation with you guys today because they're right behind me, just with me, and they're excited about what we're getting into here. And so I don't necessarily need the board, but I love the board because it's just to me it has become a symbol of these connections and a symbol of the possibilities to life and to our expression of ourself, and that our life never ends. In fact, the guides talk to me on the board. They will say, what you call this thing death, we don't have that such a word. What we call that life. Your life is just transformed, and it will always continue to transform, whatever stage you're at. And so in their dimensions, they don't even use, or they actually touch many dimensions. They don't even use the word death. They understand our language, but they said so far from the truth of what really happens. And then having that experience, as I told you, with that one girl's dead sister. And then when I started out, I started with the girl's dead sister. It did itself to me twice, where you have a dead sister kind of thing. It really showed me about the power and bond of love, and that it does continue on in a form in a consciousness that is available and able to communicate. Yes. And so there's no doubt in my mind that the deceased live on. There's no doubt in my mind at all. How about you guys?
Oh, same here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I've had, a lot of individuals who talk about their relatives that come back. My mother, when she had dead relatives that came back and talked to her quite often. So I do believe that those entities continue on. Yes, I agree. Now, you mentioned that you're not at your normal location and you do travel with your boards. I have two questions for that. Okay. One, do you have specific boards that you travel with always, and how many do you take for the second question?
Well, right now I have two with me. Okay, I have this one. It's made by my friend Linda Deer, and it's called the Universal Channel Board, and it's a round one, and it's about the size, smaller than a dinner plate, maybe the size of a lunch plate or a salad plate. Okay. And it has a little round planchette, and it's rubbery, and it works wonderfully, and it's small and it's little, and I just usually put one finger on it, and my partner will put one or two fingers, three fingers on it, and we just go. It goes really fast. It's in a small little circle. It's adorable. And yeah, and I always have that one with me. And when I travel out of the country, that's the one I take. But let me see. I just went recently to Malaysia and Singapore, and I did not take a board with me because I talk to them directly now. But when I went to Africa last year, I did take a board, and I ended up talking to them directly anyway. So it's like kind of like I don't necessarily as much. But yeah, no, when I travel like to another home or something, or I'm visiting people, I will take usually that board, and the other board I'll bring if I'm driving my car. It'll be my 1973 board that Santa Claus gave me. You know, because sometimes I go places, people want to use the board or they want to use it with me. And so I have it for that reason too. The other thing though, I tell people, I make boards on the fly. And they're not even fancy. I talk about this on my YouTube show, and I wrote an article about this on my website. And it's what I do is I just take a paper sack, cut it open. Yep, flip it up. Yep. Put the words and numbers on there, and that's it. Our letters and numbers, and yes and no. And I don't even write down goodbye. And I get a Tupperware dish lid or a
little glass to drink.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's Pyrex dish, and away we go. So yeah, I do that a lot too. So I feel like Ouija can always be with me because it's
you can just make one.
Yeah, I just make one, exactly. And it works just as well. It works just as good. I show that demonstration a lot because I want people to know that you don't have to go out and spend all your money on a real fancy board. Although, like I said, I love collecting them, so I'm going to. But to get them to work, and not one board's better than the other. Unless you believe it is. If you believe it is, then you know what? Then get that board. I don't believe it is. And so I think anything works. Anything I make works. And I can use any board. I would love the most haunted board out there. If somebody had one, I would sit down and use it. And guess who would come through? My guides. They would come through every single time. Or my cats or your animals. I mean, because it's not the board. It's me. It's me. And the board just becomes my permission.
And that's one of the most important messages I wanted to get through today.
Was the message about it's not the board, it's yourself?
Yes. The board is not an evil thing. It's not it's not evil. It's not demonic. I mean, unless you have those intentions. If if that's the tree you're barking up, then that's what you're gonna get. But
that's right. That's exactly right. And it's you developing your own abilities. And a lot of these, as I told you, we talked about Patience Worth and Betty White and Jane Roberts. They took it to a whole nother level because they enjoyed
communicating. Yourself.
Mm-hmm. And they got the result they got. And it started with the board and they got off it. And then there they were doing all kinds of really cool stuff. So, and I aspire to that, and it inspires me because it shows that the possibilities that we humans think we can do is so far exceeds that, and that we're really not alone in the universe. And that to me is so beautiful, and that everything that is alive is sentient, has a consciousness and awareness. I mean, I can't tell you how many animals I speak to all the time. I all kinds of, from wild animals to snakes to talk to. You could talk to praying mantis.
Oh my gosh! I can't believe you just said that.
Well, I do.
I literally have a whole bunch of baby praying mantises in my living room right now. I had a cocoon of them that hatched yesterday.
What do you mean?
And I have like 40 little praying mantises in the living room.
Wait, are they in a box or something? What are they in?
They're in a jar right now.
Oh, babies! I know what they're. I find them on my flowers outdoors. Are so cute.
They are.
Oh.
I can't. Growing up, you've seen a million praying mantises, and they're just huge. But I can't get over how big their eyes are at birth. Like they're just
and
huge.
How little they are.
Yes.
They're so. You guys are like the size of your little fingernails. I know they're so small and cute.
Yes.
I find them. It's crazy, and I can't believe I can find them. I see them crawling around and I pick them up and hold them, and oh God, they're beautiful. Well, oh my gosh, you're gonna do a big release about out in your garden or something?
Yeah, I was going to try to hold on to them for about a week because I have a science camp coming up next week, and I was going to try to take them for that, and then I'm going to release them.
Oh my gosh, how fantastic is that? Yeah, they're so. I raised them once as a child. I had them in a jar too, and I had a bunch of little babies, and it was the cutest thing. I took it to show and tell, and I love praying mantises, and I find them, like I said, in my yard, and once in a while I find a big one, and I just praying mantis to me is my favorite insect in the world. Is it yours?
Oh, it's definitely the cutest thing too. And being female, we just love what happens to the males,
Oh, yes, she rips her head off and eats them. Okay, you guys, I saw something horrible the other day. I also have hummingbirds, and I post on Facebook my hummingbirds. I have babies right now in a nest, and they're really little, and the mom's feeding them, and I watch them when they hatched out their eggs and all that. I saw on YouTube these videos, and all of a sudden I went down a rabbit hole watching videos about praying mantises eating hummingbirds.
What?
Oh,
yes.
My goodness.
So they're not that cute sometimes.
I guess.
So I thought if I ever see a praying mantis on my hummingbird feeder, they said take them off immediately. You go check it out. It's disgusting, but you know what? Life has to live, and that's how praying mantises live. They eat these things, and so. But I don't like it. It made me sad.
Yeah.
But it's a reality. So those praying mantises are pretty vicious.
Yes. Wow.
Deadly.
And I will share this. There's something we started doing on my YouTube show that we have a mystery guest pop in. We've done 4 of them so far, and we don't know who the mystery guest is going to be, but the guides bring the mystery guest in. And all we know is that they give a message to humanity, or they give a message to the listeners, and it's usually for humanity's awareness to understand more about this guest. And so the first guest that came through was a caterpillar, and the caterpillar talked about how, and it's beautiful poetry. I highly recommend you go watch that video, or even go to our website. I type them up, the channel messages that come through, and I put them on my website. And that's KarenADahlman.com. And it's called, I think I call that one the caterpillar and the butterfly message or something. But the caterpillar comes through and says, we don't know who it is. They don't let you know who it is at first. You have to guess. And it goes on for like 2 or 3 pages, and then we write it down. Then we read it all back. And but it was beautiful. The caterpillar says, and they write stories they write stories, beautiful stories about the butterfly, but never about the hard workers that we are. Because you think about it, when a caterpillar's job is to just eat, and build that chrysalis, wrap itself up, does all the work, and then what happens? The butterfly emerges and lives for like a week or 2.
Yeah.
Boom, done. That's it. It's the caterpillar that does all the work, but who they write the poems about is the butterfly. And it was so poetic. That was our first guest that came through, and it had a big message for humanity. And then the next character came through was, I believe it was the owl, and talked about his role. And was telling us that they really do need forced trees to be culled, and not to stop the culling because you're afraid you're going to hurt us. In fact, you're hurting us when you don't cull the trees, because then we can't live, because when there's too many trees, it blocks the sunlight, and then when it blocks sunlight, a lot of the things that grow lower in the forest die off. Then the rats leave. That is what they eat. And then other things die off that the rats eat, or have to go away. So they said, you do cull, it's fine, a natural culling or your culling. So it was a really beautiful message, and I wasn't expecting them to say, yeah, cut down some trees. They basically said that. Then the hummingbird came through and had a really cute message. And then the last character we had come through was, who was our last character? God, I can't even think of it right now. It was surprising. Can't remember who my last character was. We've done 4 of them, and it's just fun. We just don't know who it's going to be when the message is coming through, because it comes in so quickly through the board, and then we just read it back, and we guess along with usually the viewers too, like, who is this? Who did we just talk to? So that's kind of a fun thing we're doing, and that's where we just been talking to a lot of animals. Oh, I know who came through. Get this, dragoons, which we call dragons. And they are interdimensional beings. So when you start doing this work, you guys, again, you do go down a rabbit hole. You can start talking to all kinds of levels of consciousness and interdimensional beings. And so the dragoon is one such, and they talked about their plight in history and how they were demonized, and how they weren't named correctly in Europe, in the area we call Europe, but in China they were revered, and that's where they were for such a long time. And you know, the Chinese culture celebrates the year of the dragon and the dragon culture and all that stuff. And they're called dragoons. So our last message came from dragoons.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's different.
Well, we're up against the clock. Do you have any events that you want to announce, and remind us of your YouTube channel or the series when we can catch that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Come to Karen A Dahlman, Dahlman, on YouTube, or Creative Visions Publications. And then my website's under my same name. Put that A in there. Don't forget my middle initial. And you'll find me on all social media under Karen A Dahlman. Yeah, so in September, lots of cool things are happening. We've got the Helen Peters stone we're putting in. It's a beautiful monument. Our group has been drawing it and designing it, and that's happening on September 22nd. The weekend before before September 14th, 15th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, I will be at an afterlife conference in Scottsdale, Arizona, speaking about the Ouija board and the afterlife. That should be a lot of fun. That's a great conference. A lot of good people that are in this realm of talking, communicating about the afterlife will be there. I know you had Rosemary Ellen Guiley on your show. She'll be at that conference. And it's gonna be fun. That's September, again, that weekend of the 14th, 15th. It opens like that Thursday, and then I think it goes through that Monday. I'll be there through Sunday. And then other than that, I'm just really focusing on my YouTube show. We're doing a live session that's coming up June 8th, and we do a live interactive Ouija session where we're usually online. We use Google Plus through YouTube, so it's live, and you get to write your questions and talk directly to the guides through your questions that you write and type to us, and we try to get to them all. And that will be June 8th at 5:30 Pacific Daylight Time in the United States. So anybody listening in other countries, you're welcome to join too. And you can go to my YouTube page and you can click on the link to that show, that live streaming, and you just click on it. It'll give you a reminder when it's going to happen. But that's really probably our next big event will be June 8th. But yeah, come join me on social media. So I just want to say, Marie and Marienne, it's been a pleasure being here with you today, and thank you for this opportunity to share some of my thoughts about the Ouija with you guys.
Oh no, thank you so much.
It's been wonderful. I just want to let you know that you have just this happy, vibrant, positive attitude. It's no wonder that the spirits are so willing to talk to you, and I appreciate all that you've talked to us about today. Thank you so much.
Well, very kind of you. Thank you. And I just want to say the guides are here, and they just want to say thank you to you guys too. It's great to have this opportunity for me to present. And I'm saying it in my words, but that's what they would like to tell you, that it's been a great forum.
Well, thank them.
So
as well.
Yeah, thank you guys, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend and night.
Back at you. Be in
Same
touch.
to you.
And thank you all for tuning in. And until the next episode, stay scared.
Just some scary movie. You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters.